Hey guys, welcome back to the Art of Craftsmanship. My name's Dustin, and today we're going to do an update video on the oil drum fire pit. Now, this fire pit build video was the absolute most controversial video we've ever done. There are tons of people who really had opinions about whether or not this thing was going to hold up. Now, it's been about a year. I made this last spring, and it's still here. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of do an update video. We'll go back, we'll review some of the things that I like about it, some things I might change, and all the little bits and bobs and things that people commented on. I think it'd be a fun way to kind of go back and rehash this and look at this fire pit one more time. Let's get into it. Now, this metal handle was by far the most controversial out of anything on this fire pit build. Everyone had an opinion on whether or not I would burn my hand, whether or not I should have put the handle right in the middle, whether I should have put it on the front with hinges, whether I should have do two handles. Now, all those are good comments, and they are valid comments, and people had valid concerns because it is a metal handle right in the middle of the top of where the fire is burning. But what I can say is that it was never my intention to burn a fire in this pit with the lid on. The lid is there to protect it at the end of the fire. If you're putting the fire away, you put the lid on so that way you can walk inside and the wind can blow. You don't have to worry about the embers burning out. But really, anytime I'm going to burn this fire, I take the pit off, the top off, I go and I put it aside, and then I have a fire, right? So before I ever start it, I have to take it off and burn it. Now, there could be a time that you do want to put your lid on. Say you have a bunch of kids around, you have a fire, and you want to let it burn and be inside. Now, that's when you might take a stick or something to lift, put it on the fire or lift it off the fire. With all fire pits that you see, if they have a mesh top like this, they always have a ring or a handle in the middle on top. The reason why it's designed that way is for balance, because you can't pick up two handles with one stick if it's hot, but you can pick it up from the middle because it's your balance point. So if you have a stick, you can lift it up directly from the middle and you can take it off in one motion. And that's the main reason to have that handle in the middle that way, and also the reason why it's made out of metal and not out of wood. So we had a lot of comments on different people thinking that I would burn my hand. I've had this pit for a year. I've never burned my hand, and no one else has ever burned their hand, because I would say 99.9% of the time that lid's taken off, it's put aside, and then we burn our fire for however long we want. And then maybe at the very end, I'll put the lid back on before I go inside. The next issue that we got a lot of comments about goes hand in hand with this lid being off during the fire, and that's on the aluminum rivets that we use to hold on this mesh. Now, with this, it was a good comment. If you're using aluminum rivets in something that's really hot, they would probably melt in a really hot fire. But again, this lid was never kept on during the fire, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, if I had stainless steel rivets at the time, I probably would have used them instead, but these worked perfectly fine. Another issue that we talked about on this and that have been commented on, and something that I've actually noticed, is these little tabs on the corners. Now, I put these on specifically so that way I would have something to register the top as I'm setting it down on. And that really does come into play when there's a fire going and you want to be able to put this on without burning your hand. You can do it quickly, but because these edges are so thin, it's important to be able to kind of do it and rest it right on. Now, there have been some times where I went to rest it on and one of these tabs may have come off and hung off the side wrong, but really there was never an issue. But if I had to go back, I probably would add a little bit more, and if you guys are going to make this, maybe make these 2 inches instead of an inch. It'll just give you that much more ease as you're laying it on top to be able to register and set it right down on. Now, there are some areas in the actual fire pit that I did use the aluminum rivets, and that's underneath the bottom pieces where I have these brackets that hold the bottom piece on. Now, they could have been an issue, but the reason that I don't think that they were an issue is because they were actually underneath. So these are the little brackets. The rivets that are holding these brackets in place are underneath here, and they're maybe a half an inch away or so away from these actual brackets. So because of that, there was a little bit of an air gap, and it was never an issue. I did put the holes in the bottom, which worked out perfectly. As you can see, there's a little bit of rust. There's a little bit of rust everywhere, but really I didn't have to worry too much about this rusting out on the bottom. And the other thing that I think really was one of the kind of final issues that a lot of people commented about was that this barrel may just be too thin and that it would warp. Now, it is pretty thin. You can see it, it shifts a little bit, but my reason for these metal pieces on the bottom, this is the thickest steel that I used, was to avoid that. So most of the heat is resting on this and not on the actual thin metal of the barrel. It's worked out really well. I think that where the legs are attached, the weight of the fire they may have warped there a little bit more than anything else. And that's just because I did not back them. So that's one last thing that I might have done a little different. One more thing that I might have done different is maybe back each of these legs on the inside with a piece of metal, a bracket, just to reinforce that, to give a little bit more strength at each junction point where the legs attach to the bottom of the pit. Now, another big thing that we didn't get a lot of comments on, but ended up being a huge issue for me, was the decorative feet. Now, these feet are beautiful, and they worked out perfectly, and they do exactly what they need to do. The biggest issue that I had, though, is that with my dog and her lead, she always got her lead stuck on these. No matter what I did, I couldn't flip them out because of this spiral. So every time she got stuck, I had to walk all the way over, grab her lead, and guide it back through. And this happened pretty often. So keep that in mind, depending on what you want to do for the feet of yours. If you have a dog on a lead, or if you have something that might get caught on here, just do a regular foot. Don't worry about having this kind of decorative spiral foot. Another thing that we had some comments on was the amount of paint that I did on the outside. Now, most of them were positive. A lot of people were saying the patience I had to be able to go through all this to do something that's this decorative. But really, you know, it did turn out really nice. I'm happy with the way it looked. It's always looked really nice. And the extra layers of paint did make a difference, because you can kind of see here where I did just one layer of paint on the silver, it rusted a little bit. The areas where I did black, pretty much no rust at all. So I used the high temp paint for grills. It's worked out really well. Nothing's chipped off. Now, the last thing that I want to comment on, and this is something that actually was not really ever commented on, I was a little surprised, was the metal mesh that I used. This mesh is metal lath. It's used inside of walls when you're doing plaster walls, and it's really inexpensive, which is the reason why I got it. I think it was maybe $10 or $11 at Home Depot when I picked this up, and it did exactly what I wanted to do, which was to create a mesh that you could see through, but it would protect this from any embers or fire coming out, you know, things coming out while the fire was dying down. Now, again, for my purpose, this worked perfectly. This was rarely ever in the fire, but I was a little concerned because I didn't know if it was galvanized. I didn't know if it was stainless. I wasn't sure if it would rust or not, but I can say that it's done exactly what I wanted to do, and it's been a perfect mesh for this fire pit. If you want to use this for a fire pit or for a grill or something that is actually going to be in the fire more often, I would suggest doing a little bit more research. And if there's anybody out there watching who knows what this type of lath is made out of, I'd love to know. You can put that in the comments below. But definitely do your research. If you're going to use this in a high temp area, do a little research. Make sure you know what it's made out of before you do it, because you don't want to put galvanized mesh into a fire pit or into a grill where you're going to be doing food and things like that. If it's going to be here just as the mesh on the outside, it worked perfectly for me. Well, I think that's enough talking about it. Let's start a fire. All right, guys, well, as you can see, the fire pit does exactly what it was designed to do, and that's to hold a fire in it. And the nice thing is that it is movable, so I can kind of move it around. Usually I keep it in the backyard. It's nice to bring it out front if we need to. But really, you know, the nice thing is that it does hold the fire. It does what it needs to do. I don't have to worry about the lid burning my hand because it stays off most of the time. If you're interested in and you like this type of update video, let us know in the comments below, because I know that I like to see people kind of update things and follow up on projects they've done in the past. And if that's something that interests you, let us know and we can do some more videos like this. Also, if you want to check out our most recent video, which is the smithy build, you can see it behind us all nice and lit up. I've done all the lights in it after we did the video, and it's going to be a really interesting background to do more videos in the future. So let us know, check that out. Let us know what you think about that video as well. If you want another way to support the channel and you feel like you've got something out of this, you can always go over to patreon.com and support us there. We really appreciate all the patrons on the channel. That's something that, you know, we know that is people going above and beyond and supporting us, and we really, really appreciate it. And we put that all right back into the channel. So thank you so much for our patrons, and thank you for those new patrons. And check out our podcast, the Art of Craftsmanship podcast on the Makery Network. You can also follow us on Instagram at the Art of Craftsmanship, and the Art of Camera Guy, which is Devin behind the camera. And that's it. I mean, I'm really happy with the pit. It's done a really great job. It holds a fire. I love it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.